We're super happy that Rebecca's joining us today. She's been one of our partners on this project from the very beginning. And as she said, she's one of the, are you the founder of the niche meat processing assistance networks? Well, anyway, she's a staple there. And so she's joining us today to share kind of just about this whole sector and with the resources that this program offers, which is pretty extensive. And so we thought today would be a good opportunity for her to share with us kind of a footprint of what you need to think through, what some of the big challenges are that people encounter, and then where the resources are that you can reach out to overcome them when you're operating facilities, starting a facility, taking over a facility. So super excited to have you here today, Rebecca.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been with NPAN for 8 years. I did not found it, but it's been around for 15 years now. And we're a pretty unique program in that we are a national extension program, and it's called a community of practice. So we're a network made up of practitioners in the field, from producers to processors, distributors, suppliers, consultants, as well as academia and government folks, trying to just problem solve together issues along the niche meat supply chain. And when I say niche, it's pretty broad. It's basically local and regional meat supply chains. So not necessarily exporting, not we don't work with national packers or anything like that. So small and very small and some mid-scale facilities. And we basically are responsive to our members. We have about 35 members in our network. Everyone here on the call can become a member. It's free. And you just do it by signing up on our website, on the front homepage of our website. And then you can be part of our listserv or also get our newsletter and find out about our courses and webinars and other educational offerings. But we poll people once a year in January about what their needs are, and then we spend the rest of the year creating content for them to meet their needs. So we do that through one-on-one technical assistance, quite a lot of that. So we have 15 consultants on retainer who will take your calls or your emails, and they're all subject matter experts in their various expertise. So you can book a call directly on our website with them for free and get up to a couple hours of free consulting from them. We also do, like I said, we have a listserv, so that's a lot of like peer support. We have a Facebook page called Small Meat Processor Support Group. It's a private page. We put on webinars almost monthly. We have a couple self-paced short courses. One of them is called the Western Meat School, and that one is designed for direct marketers of meat. And then the other one is called the Meat Processor Academy, and that is designed for beginning and newish meat plant operators. And those are self-paced courses. And then we also offer a couple very small cohort based mastermind programs where we spend a year together diving into the business of developing a meat brand and also running a meat plant. Those are our main offerings. And then we do a little bit of research and we write case studies, and then we have tons of stuff on our website too. So we're a small but mighty team of 2.5 people now. I just got a new half-time person who's a meat scientist named Kylie Burris. And then I have my program manager, David Zarling, who I'm sure many of you know. He's been a plant operator for about 15 years now. And he does consulting on the side. And nobody on this call is allowed to take him anymore because he's working too many side hustles and I need him. But I think he is going to go down to California and work with the new operators that took over the Belcampo plant for like a month and just help them get that plant back up and running because it needs extensive repairs and upgrades. So yeah, that's basically what we do in a nutshell. And my child is looking through the desk right now.
No
Uh,
problem.
not sure what for. I don't have any money. But yeah, that's what MPAN does. I could type the website in the chat box. Hopefully most of you know it.
I
And
put the niche.
oh,
Yeah,
it's right there. Yeah. You already took care of
better twice than never.
it.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so I could either just talk or people could ask me questions.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit just to get started, and then we'll, like, um, what's top of mind for you right now? What's interesting to you? What's happening that you think could be inspiring or helpful to people on the line?
Oh, I'm I'm not exactly inspirational right now. Sorry to say. Um, there's opportunities to be had, but it wouldn't be in opening a new facility, that's for sure. Things were looking good for a couple years of the pandemic, because that was sort of a boost in demand, considerable boost in demand. But now it plateaued, and then now we've seen declines, mainly because of the volume of cattle. And so it would be very hard to start a new processing facility at this moment. Doesn't mean you can't be planning, because things will get better again. The cattle markets are cyclical, and you always got to be behind the curve a bit when you're planning any sort of facility, or even like launching a meat brand, for example. But with the low cattle numbers, the very high costs of construction and equipment right now, and also the very high costs of labor, especially in California, that kind of trio of factors makes it pretty much untenable financially, to launch a new facility. Doesn't mean you couldn't take over one. Like the folks who bought the former Belcampo plant apparently got it for a steal. However, a bunch of the equipment that was supposed to be inside the facility was not there. So somebody stole something, but not sure what. So yeah, there could be opportunities to take over existing facilities if you get it for a great price. But that doesn't mean that you can't be working with co-packers and creating value-added products, and start working on it from that end, building your market and your brand and your product line, working with co-packers, and then maybe eventually in 5 to 10 years, opening your own facility after you've gotten your sales over $1 million. That's when I generally start to tell people to start thinking about their own facilities, or simply just doing more retail exempt, where you're just renting a commercial kitchen and making products with inspected meat. That's also a very low risk, low cost way to dabble in the processing side of things without having to own anything. So those are some things that I see right now. Not necessarily the most optimistic, but yeah.
Are there a lot of new plants opening?
In certain parts of the country, yeah, definitely. Yeah. The
What
USDA $1 billion definitely launched a lot of new facilities. They're under construction right now. There's about 10 or so large beef plants being built with the capacity for about 15,000 head a day. We do not have those numbers in this country at all. And these are, hundreds of millions of dollar plants, and one is actually $1 billion plant. They're really going to struggle. But that extra capacity is definitely going to put volume pressure on those mid-scale plants. They're going to struggle even more to get cattle. And a lot of these new plants being built are more vertically integrated or have cattle on contract, and so they have more of an assured supply. But yeah, there's small plants being built in the Midwest and the South. Um, where's some new plants being
about
built?
non-cattle plants? What about uh hogs and sheep and goats, things like that?
I mean, a lot of these plants are red meat plants, and we'll do sheep and hogs, or at least hogs. Beef and pork, you generally see those in the same plant. A lot of people are dropping sheep and goats for a variety of reasons. Not many like small animal only plants, maybe on the mobile side, or maybe sheep and goats doing custom exempt, more like halal style processing, where you come and pick out your live animal and they process it right there for you after you've purchased the live animal. So you can do that under custom exempt. But yeah, there's great margins in pork from a processing perspective. There's negative margins on lamb and goat, and then beef is okay. So you would almost never see a brand new lamb goat facility go in.
And so is that why there's only, I mean, Superior's like the big one in California?
Yeah,
It's-
and then there's a big one in Denver that
And
the
so you have to have
farms are-
huge volume, is what you're saying?
yeah.
Wow. Mhm.
There's a question here that it was asking for your thoughts on the mobile facilities and
To start.
just, yeah.
Yeah, so there has been a lot of interest in mobile facilities for a long time, probably about 20 years, and there are very few in operation. There have many have been purchased, and they are either stationary or they've been sold off or shuttered. There's probably, my best guess is there's between 12 to 15 USDA inspected mobile slaughter units operating in the country right now, so not very many, because they are mostly financially unviable. They work in a few locations, islands. They work great in islands. They work great on very, very large private ranches, like the Wild Idea by Buffalo Company in North Dakota, I believe. They have their own bison kill unit. The San Juan Islands, the Alaskan Islands, there's one in Martha's Vineyard. And the reason why they work in islands or very remote places is because they can be cost competitive with a farmer literally having to put live animals on a ferry and ferry live animals to the mainland to be killed. So they can charge, $200, $250 for slaughter because they can compete with ferrying live animals. But in most cases, mobile slaughter units are not competitive price-wise, and they can't process that many animals. And so farmers generally like to bring in larger groups of animals to stationary facilities, plus they only slaughter. You still have to take the carcasses to a butcher shop. So they only solve for a part of the problem. That's for red meat species. For poultry, that's kind of a different story. You could process in the same space, but there's no margins in poultry processing either. So there's probably just a handful of USDA mobile poultry units. There's a lot of exempt ones though, meaning under the 20,000 bird limit. Yeah, that's mobile. Then there's modular, which are like container units. And those have wider application. They're a little bit more turnkey. They work great in places that have very strict zoning, California being one of them. They require significantly less site work, concrete and foundation work. They still are operationally inefficient. You can only kill and process one animal at a time because they're just these long skinny boxes. So a live animal comes in one side and then goes to the carcass cooler. But in terms of the skinning and eviscerating and all that, it's only one animal at a time. So they're really only designed to handle about 10 animals a day. That's beef, or beef equivalent would be like 20 pigs a day or 40 sheep potentially. So, and then the other nice thing about those units, they are more expensive per square foot than brick and mortar. But if your business fails, you can sell it and they just cart it off and they retain their value. So that's a nice thing.
Interesting.
Or if you just outgrow it, not even if your business fails, if you scale up and outgrow it, if you're like, okay, that was good for the first 5 years, now I'm going to sell it, someone will definitely buy it.
And is that like a shipping container kind of a
Yeah.
modular? Okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was wondering for my area, because everything up here is 3 hours away. Like any processing plant is 3 hours away. So you start weighing that transportation versus a mobile unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, if you're talking 10 animals a day, that's still a lot of animals. And that's about break even. So say 50 weeks times 5, 250 days times 10 animals. That's 2,500 animals. That's a lot of animals.
And the problem is keeping the volume in order to keep them sustainable, correct?
To pay your overhead and your labor, yeah, and keep your employees on staff. Yeah. Yeah. If you've got a millionaire who doesn't mind, underwriting the cost and making it a hobby, but most people have to pay overhead and pay labor and all of that. Like very, very small, like wild game shops, many of those are seasonal and they operate literally out of somebody's garage. And it's all custom exempt, so there's no regulator standing there. And those can operate as seasonal jobs because it's not a huge, or seasonal businesses because it's not a huge investment. I know several wild game shops that are literally in somebody's outbuilding on their property. But once you start purchasing, like these Friesla modular units, it's 1.5 million is the base model, up to like 3 million. Your loan payments are going to be, I don't know, $7,000-8,000 a month. So that's just your very, very basic cover. And then you got to cover probably, 20,000 in labor every month. Like you're talking very slim margins. So
How many of those modular units are operational in California? Do you know?
that's a good question. I don't actually know of any Friesla units in operation in California. Does anyone on this call know?
I would like to know of any for our area, just in general.
You
I
can
think
contact
Five Mary's
Friesla.
one has one.
Who?
5 Marys in Siskiyou.
Oh,
think
is that what
they have.
they bought, was a modular unit?
Yeah,
Okay. For the slaughter or for the processing?
for the slaughter, and then they have their own processing building somewhere else, like in town, but it's
Okay.
a separate location.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you all should make a field trip.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
I just saw one in Montana a few weeks ago at the Mountain Meat Summit. This one was really cool, actually. The whole model was just, at first I was very skeptical, and then I saw the facility and was like blown away. It's called the Producer Partnership. It's a nonprofit. And they have the modular setup. It's sort of like this. So it's a bunch of units connected together like this, and live animals come in one end and boxed beef goes out the other. It is set up to give ground beef away to food banks and schools, and that's 100% of what they do. It's all ground beef. It's all cold cows. Not just ground beef, ground anything. So any janky animal that you want to bring, they call it the place where your scary and disabled animals go for their last rest. And it's beautiful because it's turning animals that otherwise would have been shot on the farm or composted or maybe even turned away at your USDA plant. The 3-legged cow, as long as it's ambulatory, not lying on its side, that's what they take there. And Montana, I think, is the #1 cow-calf state, or it's got a ton of calves. And so they have lots of these cull animals, and that keeps this plant busy year round. And then they fundraise. Obviously, they have to fundraise a lot to keep everyone on staff, but people like to write big fat checks in Montana because there's a lot of millionaires moving there, and they love to underwrite the costs of this facility. And I think every state could have one of these cold cow facilities and run it as a nonprofit and get
And feed the
feed.
schools.
Yeah. Primary audience is food banks, and they only work with schools that can't afford to buy from their local producers for one reason or another. They don't want to outcompete ranchers that are doing this for a living. So they work with like the poorest school districts in the state of Montana. Yeah, super cool. Yeah. So what else do you got for me?
I have a question. If I can.
Go ahead, Khalid.
Yes, when you talk about halal being custom exempt,
Mhm.
I've been researching this, and my background is ag engineering, water engineering, and ag business. I've been
Mhm.
researching for quite some time. I've been working with pretty much almost the toppest dog of at CDFA. That used to be Dr. Heppe, who just recently retired. What do you mean by custom exempt for halal?
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, halal, you can obviously do religious slaughter under USDA inspection if you want to sell meat by the cut or wholesale meat to restaurants and grocery stores and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But if your primary market are people who want live animals for high holidays, and they want to pick their animal out and they want you to kill it right there and they want the meat fresh. You can do that under what's called custom exempt, and it's an exemption to the federal regulations that allows you to slaughter the animal for the owner of the animal, and do some minimal processing for them. So person buys the animal, they pick it, they say, okay, I want that sheep. And then you kill it for them, and then you dress it however they want it. And then you give them the fresh meat to take home.
Okay, so just for everybody to know, what you're saying is right, but it's not 100% right. They have to pay for the animal before you even harvest it. And once
That's what I said. I said
Yeah.
they pick out the live animal.
Let me finish. You have to inspect the animal. You get trained by CDFA. 3 members of your outfit have to be trained as inspectors. And the minute you see anything that you don't like, you have to call CDFA and they dispatch a vet to your facility. So you are still being inspected. You just trained to be an inspector. And if you don't recognize something, you have to call for backup.
Okay.
For them to release the animal. So it is still an inspected. So there's no exemption there.
Yeah. No, I'm not explaining the California laws. I'm explaining the federal custom exemption. So California adopted their own little rules around that. So you're right. You do have to look at the live animal. I'm explaining the federal custom exemption and how it works on a federal level.
Okay. So just for everybody to know, this is what the California, if you do a California kill and the CDFA, your slaughterhouse is certified with CDFA.
Mm-hmm.
The owner and the operators become certified and trained by CDFA. And if they handle something, they call for backup. So it's still, the meat is still inspected, regardless.
Yeah, it's different. The meat itself is not inspected. You look at the live animal. So you're right. They are trained in looking at signs of animal disease and stuff like that, but it's still not considered inspected meat. You don't get stamps on your packages.
No. You get stamped. See, if you cut it 6 ways.
It's still not for sale meat. You can't sell them.
Not for resale. Here we go. It gets stamped, not for resale. That's exactly right. If you cut it up for them, you wrap it up in paper, and then you stamp the paper, not for resale. You know. So there's rules, that's why I'm surprised. So I hear people saying things. I'm saying, wait. We need to get clear on all this. It's
Of course there's rules. There's no USDA inspector standing there though, like there is in regular slaughterhouses.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You were talking earlier about $1 million sales threshold to start looking at your own plant if you're doing like the direct wholesaling thing, which is what we do. Now, I have no desire to ever open my own processing facility of any kind, but just out of curiosity, why is the threshold $1 million? in sales?
It's based on minimal viable size for paying for the cost of a USDA inspected brick and mortar slaughterhouse and processing facility. So the minimum viable size these days, given the cost of cattle, labor, equipment, utilities, it's about 2,500 animals, beef or beef equivalent. That equates to about $1 million in gross sales. Yeah. And that's based on extensive research that our organization has done. And we've gotten financial data from hundreds of plants around the country.
Okay, thank you.
But that obviously is for a full USDA slaughter through cotton wrap. And what I was saying is that you could certainly just do like retail exempt butchery if you wanted to. Or you could just do a USDA processing facility with no kill. So that's a considerably smaller footprint. Or yeah, you could do custom exempt as well. And you can get into that for much cheaper.
Just as a quick question, Rebecca, if I could, is that research on like all USDA inspected, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, however many days a week that is on the $1 million? Or is there, I guess I'm asking, is there any difference if you chose to do like USDA 2 days a week inspected and then did custom kill 3 days a week? Does that change that equation, or have you guys looked at kind of a combo piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't change much because really your only difference on days under inspection is that you have more intensive record keeping. And so you may have to have an additional employee for record keeping purposes. That would be really your only difference in operating expense between inspected and non-inspected. Otherwise, you have the same overhead, the same utilities, the same labor costs, packaging, labeling, ingredients. Everything else is the same. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
So, I mean, there are some facilities that do custom and inspected and charge just a little bit more for inspected. And that's mainly to cover that increased cost of administration. Yeah.
I have a question for you more about the cattle market, because as you pointed out, I mean, cattle are really in short supply right now and they're very expensive. And the really big processors are doing everything they can to keep their volumes up. So they're buying everything they can. And all the people that I know that have brands, particularly grass-fed brands, are really struggling to get calves to finish. And so I'm curious what you're hearing, or if you're talking to anyone that's giving you a picture of the future of the market, how long it's going to last like this, and what the implications for the opening of plants are, or the need for plants.
Yeah, that's kind of the $1 million question. From my understanding, cattle, and there's probably some cattle people on this call who know a lot more than I do. I was a pig girl back in the day, mainly pigs and chickens, but my understanding is cattle prices are cyclical, roughly like a 5-year cycle or so. So, when prices are low, like they were the first couple of years of the pandemic, the cow-calf producers cull animals and produce less calves because they're responding to shitty prices, right? So then there's less inventory into the stalker and finisher phase. So now we're in that phase with the low inventory combined with drought. So a lot of people sold off their herds or reduced their herd sizes with the drought. So what should happen when prices are awesome, like right now, is all the cow-calf producers are buying cows, increasing their herd sizes if they can, if they're not in a droughty area, and increasing calf production. And then in a couple years, we should see a lot more animals. Does anyone on the call know better than me in terms of that? Did I get it right?
I might jump in just a little bit.
Yeah.
There might be other people too. So Michael, I appreciate you saying that because I'm in the grass-fed beef business and it is rough terrain out there right now. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of people, even the cow-calf producers, can't afford to buy anything just because of prices. The prices of live cattle, it is almost worth selling so much inventory just based on the price of live cattle. So the people that are, I mean, it's interesting because there's still a ton of buyers out there that seem to be wanting them, but they tend to be more of the larger feedlots, people that are feeding them out on a large level. The smaller level, the inventory is really hard to get and you almost can't afford it. I know based on our even prices, and you know, we don't want to change prices, you know, with the market because it's just hard on our consumers, but we try to, you know, keep that consistent. So purchasing is a little rough right now. So a lot of like the good cattle, the cow-calf pairs, the viable ones that are going to continue to be in herds, people are selling them some, but they want that next production year, because that next production year they're banking that the prices are going to still be the same. So we're kind of in the middle of that, is my opinion. Again, super much opinion there. But most people are holding all the cattle they can, hopefully that they can take advantage of the high prices to sell calves. I think you will see a change here in maybe a couple years, like 2 years, that you'll probably see a fairly drastic, because the market will be a little bit more loaded with available cattle that have been kept on board. But that's just my opinion. So please, somebody else, if they have another opinion, weigh in.
Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm sure it's super expensive to buy cows right now too. So, it, you know, with that market volatility, it does make it really hard to think about investing in a multi-million-dollar processing facility. And so I think there's a lot of trepidation right now by would-be processors to start something new. And then banks are being pretty stingy too. There's not a lot of credit available right now because they don't have a lot of hope necessarily for the sector. And then when they see people's business plans and pro formas, they don't look good. So there's a real difficulty in obtaining capital. I've heard that from multiple lenders and people trying to get funds. So yeah, I think those two things combined makes it challenging. Back to the cattle number, though, I think an opportunity that California really should take more advantage of is the beef on dairy cross. So we have this shortage of cows and calves. You've got to get those dairy cows pregnant all the time, nonstop. And for a long time, you know, the veal calves have not had much of a market, and definitely not the dairy steers or the dairy bull calves. But if you were crossing them to beef, that could be a different story. It could be good for your dairy farmers who often really struggle in California because of the high costs of operating. And then also just increase the supply of viable animals. So is there anyone in this group doing beef on dairy crosses or working with dairy cattle producers at all?
Yes, I am, Rebecca. We just started loading up on dairy bull calves. So
Nice.
we're close to getting 100. Probably by the end of this month we'll be at 100.
Oh, nice. Very nice. They
So,
make excellent beef.
I was told that the best steak you can have is a Jersey steak. The only problem is the marbling is yellow, and people do not like yellow marbling, so that's why they started crossing it with other breeds to
Jersey beef is phenomenal. We used to raise Jersey bull calves. It is phenomenal. And
I'm second person who's telling me this. Never tried it.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
it's the best beef I've ever had. And they marble without any work. Like you could have shitty grass and they will still marble because they're a dairy breed. But it is true. Their fat is really yellow, and we used to sell their beef at farmers markets in vacuum sealed packages so you could see the fat, and people would be like, "Whoa, what is that?" And we were like, "Beta carotene. That is grass. That's the color that it should be." And once we got a chance to talk to consumers about it, and they bought it and they tried it, they were loyal customers after that.
Yeah. All about education, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So sample it.
Guernsey the same as would you get the same result with Guernseys or just only with Jerseys? You would think they're so close.
Oh, I think you would. Yeah. I definitely think you would if you can get your hands on some Guernseys. Yeah. So
I have a question. So it sounds like you guys are working with the Star Walker folks on their new plant, the former Belcampo, former Nexus plant. And so I know they're really interested in pork. And with your pork experience, how are you feeling about that? In fact, they were just on last week talking about that, weren't they? Was it last week? Courtney?
Yeah, it was last week, and they actually have their beef line open. They don't have their pork line open yet, though. So they opened it 2 weeks ago, I think. So,
Oh, good.
Where in California is that plant?
It's in Wairika.
Way up
Oh,
north. Almost
Well,
yeah,
Oregon.
not doing that. Good luck.
Oh, there's definitely a demand for it up there. And then it'll serve Southern Oregon too. It's really designed for like the truckload at a time. I don't know much about pork. I think that they're gonna have a hard time finding animals.
Well, we hit the minimums at a full scale cut and wrap facility, so we're not using a mom and pop,
Mm-hmm.
but that minimum is basically 35 300-pound hogs.
Mm-hmm.
So they usually have a live weight of about 9,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
That comes back, by the time it gets back to us, it's 6,000 to 6,500 pounds of product, depending on how we have it diced up. But that's really the minimum to get in there. And I think there's not a lot of mid-range hog operations. And, we're growing, we're scaling up, our numbers are going to keep going up. But yeah, I think it's really hard to bridge that gap. And then yeah.
What plant do you use? Where is it?
We use the certified meat plant in Fresno, but they don't have, like she was discussing earlier, they don't have a kill floor, or at least not one that we can use. So we have to use the Yosemite Meats kill floor. And I think it's in Stockton. You think I would know because I drive there once a month. I have no idea where
We
it
used
is.
to
I
do
just know
that.
the road. But yeah, so then they get killed there, and then they get transported to certified meats. But they actually had an issue, and their tumbler where they tumble the hogs broke down a couple months ago, and it messed up their whole line pretty bad, and it cost us product. And that, not having any other options, they were basically like, "Hey, sorry guys," and we're like, "Yeah, that's cool, but I needed all that meat that I can't use now because you bolted them in the head." But
Wow.
I know there's a few poultry people on the call, right? Are there any poultry related questions?
Well, Rebecca, as far as the poultry, why not just run under the exemption and just call it a day? Is anybody here among us, looking at producing more than 20,000 birds?
I don't know.
No, and I think that's what we were running into you know, when we were talking about it before, there's nobody producing enough to make it worth breaking that ceiling.
And the other thing also is the minute you're running under the poultry, you can do white meat and red meat. You just have to set up your house a plan, and they always want you to do the red meat first, and then you finish with the white meat the same day if you wanted to. So it doesn't even create a problem here.
I know there was down in Santa Cruz, was it Fog Line Farm?
Yeah.
They
Yes.
were looking at one of those plant in a box for a while. And because they were going to work with a few different producers and try to get up to like 60,000 birds. So like 3 producers bringing in 20,000 birds. So they could maybe go USDA, but I think they even got a grant, and I don't know what happened to it. Does anyone know?
No, that's a good question. Caleb, I should call him.
Yeah.
Maybe we
So-
can find out next time.
Rebecca, you mentioned you need to do $1 million in sales. You said 25 heads. That's, I would assume, 25 heads per day, per week.
No,
Two-
that was 10 head a day.
10 head a day. So we're talking about, okay.
So 2,500 over 250 days.
That
make-
number seems so crazy to me because we're doing over 500,000 a year on 35 hogs a month. So the idea that you would need to do 2,500 cows a year to do $1 million, is that just in meat processing cost, or is that in end sale value? I guess.
No, that's sorry, that's more like generic national numbers.
Yeah.
Your California kill fees and processing fees are about double that of the rest of the country. So, you know, if you were processing 2,500 head in California, and it probably costs what, $800 to kill and process a beef in California these days. That'd be 2 million. Yeah,
Okay,
and
that
that's
makes more
literally
sense.
that's just fee for service processing. That would be like not doing any wholesaling, not doing any branded products. There's very few processors that are just fee for service processors anymore these days because there's not a lot of money in that. But that's just your very basic business model. So we just redid our business planning template, and that was the model that we chose. Assuming that, you know, or making a suggestion at the end of the business plan that processors should also consider wholesaling and creating branded products, and maybe retailing too, like having a retail storefront. So, yeah.
So Rebecca, have you worked on any plants lately? And what was the cost? What was the cost of I guess to build the plant? Out of curiosity, if you worked on anything lately.
Yeah, so again, these are national numbers. California, you might need to double the price. But it's about $450 a square foot. And you would need about a 5,000 square foot plant minimally to process 2,500 animals. So that's $2.25 million. And that does not include equipment. That is literally just the building, the rail, the coolers, but not movable equipment inside. So probably with equipment, that'd be closer to 3 million. California, it's probably maybe, has anyone built any concrete structures recently? California, I'm thinking
Well,
more
we're going to be
650.
building some, but that number you're doubling for California was right on, because our
Okay.
estimate to put up a facility when we were first looking at how we were going to do this,
Mhm.
that's why I said I don't want to do it at all,
Mhm.
was $5 to $7 million just for a basic facility, pretty much.
Mhm.
Which after permitting and then setting everything up, and yeah.
I
Yeah.
know when Anya built that plant up in Wairika, the original Belcampo plant, the original one, and this is like, I don't know, 15 years ago now, 12 years ago now, that was over 5 million, just over 5 million.
Mm. Mhm.
That was only built for, I don't know, maybe 100 animals a week at the most.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Rebecca,
Mhm.
is there a minimum land requirement? There used to be a minimum land requirement. Did they change that, or is it still there?
You know, California, has different zoning. It would depend on the zoning type, and the size of the acreage in that zoning type. Um, so there's certainly not like a federal requirement or anything. So it's really just enough land for the facility, the parking, the truck pull through. All your livestock vehicles need to be able to pull through safely, for all of your handling facilities, so the pens, and then you probably need some space for either composting, incinerator, some sort of waste handling infrastructure. And then if you are either tied to a wastewater system or you have to have your own on-site wastewater system, that takes up a lot of space as well. So, I know people built new plants on as little as like 15 acres. It's nice to have a little extra space. You don't want your neighbors nearby. So I generally say get more land if you can, because you want your neighbors as far away as possible.
So I think it's still the minimum requirement is 40 acres in California.
Yeah.
For a meat processing facility or
Yeah.
any manufacturing facility.
Meat processing, if you are in the country, in the city, if you hooked up to the sewer, I'm sure they're going to charge sewer fees for that, for so much nitrogen in the in the line. But
Yeah.
otherwise, you're completely off the grid on your own. Then because of septic requirements, they want you to be on 40 acres unless something changed. That's why I was asking you.
Oh.
And this by Dr. by Doug Hepper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're down to a couple of minutes here. So we only asked Rebecca to spend an hour with us, and she wants to go swimming. So it's getting hot up there. So Rebecca, as you pointed out at the beginning, people can email you. They can go to your website, and people can get up to 2 hours of consulting from your team and your consulting team. So we invite everyone to do that, and I just want to say thank you again for all the great realistic input. And I know you're feeling a little less optimistic about the current cycle we're in, but timing is everything, right? So now is the time to be thinking through all the things that you shared and coming up with your game plan so that you hit the market at the right moment.
Yeah. And you have the Star Walker people who are looking for partners, right? Sonoma Meat Company is desperately looking for brands to co-pack for. Someone needs to buy your redwood plant and get that thing back up and running. So there's a few opportunities. Southern California is kind of a sad state. I wouldn't know what to do down there. Not a lot of processing. But yeah, there's a few things in the works in your state and then I think the fact that you have that custom exempt on farm rule that was expanded to include more species and stuff. I think that gives people a lot of opportunity. You could sell a lot of animals that way. We sold about 40 sheep a year. I guess it was illegal back then, but oh well.
And you survived and you're not in prison, which will... Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you,
Courtney,
Rebecca.
Courtney,
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Courtney, what's up next? Do we know what the next event is?
Yeah, there'll be some in between, but the next ones that we have nailed down is we have a bunch of I think 5 or 6 different certifiers coming to talk to everyone, and they'll be in mid-August. So we have a couple of different weeks, like 3 each week. And then we're filling in hopefully a couple in between, but those are the ones that are nailed down.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great...
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.